I wasn't kidding, was I, when I said it was a busy day? Let's pull all that apart with Sky News Political Editor Andrew Clennell joining me now from Sydney. Andrew, the PM first in, 270 days to land in Perth. A bigger defence announcement too while he was there in the West, $4.5 billion, a new shipbuilding facility in Perth, and notably confirmation in that presser this afternoon that both British and American submarines will operate out of Australia. I think that's huge news. We'll pull that apart, I suspect, in the prints tomorrow. AUKUS is gathering momentum, very much playing to the coalition's strengths. But my question for you, given what we saw in the news poll yesterday and the sense of momentum out there, is this going to be a lift for the coalition?
I don't believe it is. And I think there's going to have to be some pretty major developments, either in terms of Anthony Albanese and what he has to offer, or how he performs during the campaign, or on international fronts, for Scott Morrison to win the election, Peter. I think he's really up against it. And what have we had now? We've had 3 defence announcements. And he slipped that submarines visit thing in there today, but we've had 3 defence announcements in a week. So you'd have to say they were originally thinking of going into the budget with big defence spends and saying we're the responsible economic managers, but they've had this hiccup in terms of cost of living really taking off as an issue on the back of these spiralling petrol prices. So now they're grappling with how do we say we're responsible economic managers but please the people in terms of cost of living measures, and that takes the floods takes oxygen from the defence and national security narrative.
Look, it absolutely does, and that harks back to the issue that John Howard had at the end of the Howard government. All those underlying economic numbers that again are positive for Josh Frydenberg, they were very positive for Peter Costello and John Howard, and he made that famous quip, Australians have never had it so good. But at a household level, that's not what most families felt. That's the problem for the government now. Its set of books are good, aside from the debt, but, the economic underlying numbers are very strong. Unemployment, we expect, is even going to get lower before the campaign. But punters don't feel like that when they're filling up their car and it's going to cost them $200. Aside
from the debt is an interesting thing you put in there, Peter, because, of course, he did get asked about that in that Paul Murray forum last night. And it's harder to say you're the great economic manager or managers when you have built up that debt. And is it pains to say it? Oh, but Labor would have spent more. But it does weaken the argument. And in terms of the cost of living, the thing about petrol prices, they're just much more tangible than other things going up, than even a power bill, because you're driving past the signs all the time. And if you have to travel a long distance for work, if you're a tradie who are traditionally Scott Morrison's voters, he did well to win them over, as did the coalition generally, starting from John Howard, Tony Abbott, then it's hurting you. So that's one thing that really hurts governments. And we know now, the Treasurer is saying we're going to get an interest rate rise as well.
Just quickly, I want to get into some other issues, but you mentioned last night Paul Murray's pub test led off with the Prime Minister. What did you make of his performance?
I thought he was okay. Look, I can only be honest, I'm not here to spare his blushes. I've said this before on your show, Peter. I think he talks too much. I think if he was a bit more succinct in his messages, he'd do better. He'd be in a better position.
I remember prepping a Leader of the Opposition for these. They were a hallmark of Tony Abbott's run as opposition leader. I had the same reflection. I think the Prime Minister's got to learn to use the name of people in the audience. He had a bit of a glass jaw on things like the National Cabinet last night. Mate, it's not about you. It's about the people in the room and how you want to appeal and pitch to them. I don't know that there was enough retail politics. And you're right, a bit like that comment from Tony to Kevin Rudd, does this guy ever shut up? I thought he was too long-winded. I think if his questions and responses were shorter, he could have got around the room. What is this about the hypocrisy today? What do you make of the hypocrisy? This smorgasbord of spending announcements, promises from Albanese. It's all about marginal seats and community projects. It's everything that he bitched and moaned that the coalition were doing under Bridget McKenzie. But he wants to spend $750 million doing the same.
Oh, the Herald stole a march on me, I have to admit here, Peter, because I've been seeing on Instagram Albanese announcing all these little sports projects, and I was going to look into it. I thought, hang on a minute, this is what you were getting stuck into the other guys about. So, you know, you see a lot of hypocrisy in politics. This is right up there. It's pretty disgraceful, isn't it? He's saying you're about sports rorts, but my rorts aren't as rorty as yours.
I don't think they'll have the same currency on the ground with people. I think there's a lot of worry about the level of the spending and promises in election campaigns. Again, famously, remember Rudd said the reckless spending must stop. I think that line will come out in the upcoming campaign. I've got to get to this issue in New South Wales. A group of bureaucrats from the Water Department, front page of the Daily Telegraph today, it's peak stupid. They all got on a Zoom call in the middle of the floods when there was a crisis facing people right around the state, and they had laughing yoga. This is a yoga session to deal with their mental health. I don't know, paid for, of course, by taxpayers. I just think it's outrageous.
It is outrageous. Someone should be hauled over the coals at the very least for it. And I knew you were going to ask me about this, Peter. Your producer tipped me off. So I had a look into what this body is. It's Water Infrastructure New South Wales. They're in charge of building dams. So they're not to do with the flood response. And they're 1 year old, this organisation. So I don't know who they've got as executives, but what a waste of taxpayer money apart from anything else. But they're about building the dams, not about helping people in floods. So the point I'm trying to make is those public servants weren't under stress from helping people with the floods or anything of that nature. And this makes no sense whatsoever, that what occurred here.
They're not under stress building dams because we don't have enough dams in this country either. I mean, goodness me. I think the minister should roll a few heads there if he does anything else. Thank you, Andrew, as always. Thanks for your time.